The sound of breaking glass shattered the evening quiet of Gunnison, Colorado, and Katherine Gardner knew her oldest son had done something terrible again, before she even reached the general store's doorway. Summer heat pressed down on the dusty streets in late July of 1878, making everything shimmer with a wavering intensity that matched the panic rising in her chest. She gathered her skirts and ran, her boots kicking up small clouds of dirt with each hurried step. Behind her, 5-year-old Molly struggled to keep pace while Katherine held tight to 3-year-old James's hand, practically dragging him along. Somewhere ahead, 8-year-old Thomas was undoubtedly at the center of whatever catastrophe had just occurred. "Madam, your boy just put a rock through my front window." Mr. Henderson's voice boomed across the street before Katherine even reached his store. The portly shopkeeper stood in the doorway, his face red with anger and perspiration. "That is the third incident this month. First the flour sacks, then the incident with the chickens, and now this." Katherine's heart sank as she spotted Thomas standing frozen near the water trough, his guilty expression confirming everything. Shards of glass littered the wooden walkway, catching the late afternoon sun like scattered diamonds. The front window of Henderson's general store now had a jagged hole roughly the size of a man's fist. "Thomas Michael Gardner," Katherine said, her voice tight with exhaustion and frustration. She released James's hand and knelt to meet her oldest son at eye level. "What happened?" The boy's lower lip trembled. His clothes were dirty from playing in the streets, his dark hair sticking up in several directions. "Billy Henderson said Papa was never coming back because he did not want us anymore. I got mad." The words hit Katherine like a physical blow, not because of their cruelty, but because there was truth buried within the childhood insult. Her husband had not died in some noble fashion. Robert Gardner had simply left one morning 2 years ago, claiming he was heading to Denver for work. He never returned, never sent word, never looked back at the family he had abandoned. Katherine had eventually stopped expecting him to walk through the door with apologies and explanations. "That does not give you the right to throw rocks through windows," Katherine said firmly, even as her heart ached for her son. She straightened and turned to face Mr. Henderson, who had been joined by his wife and their son Billy, a pudgy boy with a mean streak that seemed to grow wider each month. "Mr. Henderson, I am deeply sorry about your window," Katherine began, already calculating in her mind how much this would cost. Her savings were painfully thin. Working as a seamstress brought in barely enough to feed 3 growing children and keep a roof over their heads. "I will pay for the repairs, of course. Perhaps we could arrange a payment plan." Mr. Henderson crossed his arms over his barrel chest. "A payment plan? Mrs. Gardner, you still owe me for last month's groceries. I am running a business, not a charity house." Heat crept up Katherine's neck, shame mixing with anger at being publicly humiliated. Several townspeople had stopped to watch the confrontation unfold. Among them stood the widow Mrs. Peterson with her ever-present scowl, the banker Mr. Wilkins who had denied Katherine a loan 3 months prior, and several others whose names she knew, but whose sympathy she could not count on. "Nevertheless, I will make this right," Katherine said, lifting her chin despite the embarrassment burning through her. "You have my word." "The word of a woman whose husband ran off," Mr. Henderson's wife interjected, her thin lips pressed into a disapproving line. "We need assurance, not promises." Before Katherine could respond, a new voice cut through the tension, smooth and unhurried with an accent that spoke of Texas plains and long cattle drives. The lady said she would make it right. "Seems to me that should be enough." Everyone turned toward the speaker. Katherine found herself looking at a man she had never seen before in Gunnison, though the town was small enough that strangers were noteworthy. He stood tall, probably just over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his dusty trail clothes. A worn Stetson hat shaded eyes that appeared to be a striking shade of blue-gray, and several days' worth of stubble covered a strong jaw. He could not have been much older than 30, perhaps 28 or 29. A horse stood behind him at the hitching post, a beautiful roan gelding that looked as trail-weary as its owner. "This is none of your concern, stranger," Mr. Henderson said, puffing up with indignation. "This is a matter between me and Mrs. Gardner." The cowboy stepped closer, his movements easy and confident without being aggressive. Now that he stood in better light, Katherine could see the dust that covered him from hat to boots, evidence of long days on the road. His hands, she noticed, were calloused and strong, the hands of a man who worked hard for his living. "Well, seeing as I am about to make it my concern, I reckon it is," the stranger said. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. The clink of coins was audible even from where Katherine stood. "How much for the window?" Mr. Henderson's eyes widened slightly at the sight of money. $15 for the glass and installation. It is a large pane, special ordered from Denver." Katherine's stomach dropped. $15 was nearly 2 months' worth of her earnings. She opened her mouth to protest, to tell this stranger that she could not possibly accept such charity, but the cowboy was already counting out coins into Mr. Henderson's outstretched palm. "There is 20, the cowboy said. "The extra 5 is for your trouble, and for keeping a civil tongue when speaking to the lady here." Mr. Henderson looked like he wanted to argue, but the weight of gold coins in his hand apparently outweighed his indignation. He muttered something that might have been thanks and retreated into his store, his wife and son following after shooting dark looks at Thomas. The small crowd began to disperse, disappointed that the entertainment had ended without further drama. Katherine stood frozen, her children clustered around her, uncertain how to process what had just happened. Charity stung, but this stranger had also defended her honor in a way no one had since Robert left. The cowboy turned to face her fully, and she got her first clear look at his face. He was handsome in a rugged, weathered way, with sun lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often. A small scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a slightly roguish appearance. When he removed his hat, dark brown hair fell across his forehead. "Madam," he said with a slight nod. "Name is Ryan Masters. I apologize for interfering, but it did not sit right with me, watching that man speak to you that way." Katherine's mind raced, torn between gratitude and pride, between relief and embarrassment. "Mr. Masters, I appreciate your intervention, truly, but I cannot accept such a large sum from a complete stranger. I will find a way to repay you." "No need," Ryan said easily. "Consider it a gift to the boy here." He glanced down at Thomas, who was staring up at him with wide eyes. "Son, defending your family's honor is admirable, but there are better ways to handle insults than throwing rocks. You understand?" Thomas nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. I am sorry, sir. Do not apologize to me. Apologize to your mother for the trouble you caused her." "I am sorry, Mama," Thomas said, turning to Katherine with genuine remorse in his young face. Katherine placed a hand on her son's shoulder, then looked back at Ryan Masters. She needed to make him understand that while she was grateful, she was not looking for a savior or a handout. "Mr. Masters, I appreciate what you did, but I want to be clear. I will repay that $20. It may take time, but I always settle my debts." Something shifted in Ryan's expression, a look of respect replacing the casual charity. "I believe you will, Mrs. Gardner. Though I heard your name from Henderson there, I do not believe you caught mine proper." "Katherine Gardner," she confirmed, then gestured to her children. "And these are my children, Thomas, Molly, and James." "Pleased to meet you all," Ryan said, crouching down to be at eye level with the younger children. "That is a mighty fine dress you are wearing, Miss Molly. Is that your favorite color?" Molly, who had been hiding partially behind Catherine's skirts, peeked out shyly. "It is blue. Mama made it." "Did she now? That is fine stitching work." Ryan stood back up, addressing Catherine. "You are a seamstress." "I am. It is how I support my family." Catherine hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach with this man who had already seen her at a low moment. "My husband left some time ago. I manage on my own." Understanding flickered across Ryan's features, but refreshingly, she saw no pity there. "A woman who can sew that well and raise 3 children alone is managing more than most men could handle. You have my respect, Mrs. Gardner." The sincerity in his voice caught Catherine off guard. She had grown accustomed to judgment from the people of Gunnison, to whispers about what she must have done to drive her husband away, to assumptions about her character. Ryan Masters looked at her like she was capable and strong, not broken or shameful. "Are you just passing through Gunnison, Mr. Masters?" Catherine asked, curious about this man who had appeared at precisely the right moment. "Actually, I am looking for work," Ryan said, settling his hat back on his head. "Been working cattle drives for the past 10 years, but I am getting tired of the constant moving. Thought I might settle somewhere for a while, see what opportunities present themselves." "I heard there was a ranch outside town that might be hiring." "You mean the Triple Creek Ranch," Catherine said. "Mr. Patterson owns it. He is a fair man from what I hear. The ranch is about 5 miles west of town. Much obliged for the information." Ryan glanced at the sky, where the sun was beginning its descent toward the mountain peaks. "Guess I should find somewhere to stable my horse and get a meal before it gets too late. Could you recommend a decent place to stay?" "The boarding house run by Mrs. Chen on Oak Street is clean and reasonable," Catherine said. "As for meals, the restaurant attached to the hotel serves good food, though it is a bit expensive. If you want something simpler and cheaper, there is a small cafe near the church that makes excellent stew." Ryan's eyes crinkled with amusement. "A woman who knows how to stretch a dollar. I appreciate the practical advice, Mrs. Gardner." He tipped his hat to her. "I hope our paths cross again soon. And young Thomas, you stay out of trouble here. Your mama has enough on her plate without you adding to it." "Yes, sir," Thomas said, standing a little straighter. Catherine watched as Ryan Masters led his horse down the street toward the boarding house, his long stride eating up the distance. Something about him lingered in her mind, a sense of stability and strength that she had not felt in another person's presence for a very long time. She shook her head, dismissing such thoughts. A drifter cowboy looking for work was not someone to pin hopes on, no matter how kind he had been. "Come along, children," she said, gathering them close. "We need to get home and start supper." Their home was a small rented house on the edge of town, 2 rooms that served as bedroom and living space combined, with a tiny kitchen area and an outhouse in back. It was not much, but Catherine kept it scrupulously clean and had added small touches to make it feel warm and welcoming. Curtains she had sewn herself hung in the windows, and a colorful quilt she had made from fabric scraps covered the bed where all 4 of them slept together. As Catherine prepared a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and the last of their bacon, she listened to Thomas reading to his younger siblings from their one precious book, a collection of fairy tales that had been her own as a child. Her son's voice was halting but determined as he sounded out the harder words. "Mama, who was that man?" Molly asked later as Catherine tucked the children into bed. "The one with the horse. Just a kind stranger, sweetheart," Katherine said, smoothing her daughter's hair back from her forehead. "Now close your eyes and go to sleep." But as Katherine sat by candlelight that night, working on a dress commission for the banker's wife, her thoughts kept drifting back to Ryan Masters. She wondered if he would find work at the Triple Creek Ranch, if he would indeed settle in Gunnison, or if he would move on like so many others. She wondered why he had helped her when most people in town treated her with barely concealed contempt or pity. Most of all, she wondered at the flutter she had felt in her chest when he had looked at her with those blue-gray eyes, a feeling she had thought long dead after Robert's abandonment. It was dangerous to feel such things, she told herself firmly. She had 3 children to think about, responsibilities that left no room for foolish romantic notions about handsome cowboys. Still, when she finally blew out the candle and lay down beside her sleeping children, Katherine's last thought before sleep claimed her was of Ryan Masters' voice saying she had his respect. The next morning brought no relief from the summer heat. Katherine rose before dawn as always, careful not to wake the children as she rekindled the fire in the stove and started coffee. She had 3 dress orders to complete by the end of the week, which meant long hours of stitching by both daylight and candlelight. Her eyes already ached from the strain, but there was no alternative. The rent was due in 2 weeks, and Mr. Calloway, her landlord, had made it clear he would not tolerate late payment again. Thomas woke first, as he usually did, and helped by keeping James and Molly quiet while Katherine worked. He was a good boy at heart, she thought, watching him carefully pour water for his siblings. The incident with the window had been born of hurt and anger, emotions she understood all too well. Children at school had been cruel about their absent father, and Thomas had taken on the role of protector perhaps too seriously for an 8-year-old. "Thomas, I need you to watch your brother and sister today," Katherine said as she measured out their small breakfast of porridge and milk. "I have to deliver the finished dress to Mrs. Wilkins and then pick up new fabric from the supply wagon. Can you manage for a few hours?" "Yes, Mama," Thomas said solemnly. "I will keep them safe, and I will not throw any rocks." Katherine could not help but smile at his earnest expression. "I know you will not. You are my reliable boy." She kissed the top of his head, feeling the familiar ache of trying to be both mother and father to children who deserved more than their circumstances allowed. The dress for Mrs. Wilkins had turned out beautifully, despite the challenging pattern. Katherine had stayed up past midnight adding the final touches, delicate embroidery around the collar and cuffs that the banker's wife had not even paid extra for. But Katherine took pride in her work, and she hoped that quality might eventually overcome the social stigma that clung to her. She wrapped the dress carefully in clean muslin and set out for the Wilkins house on the better side of Gunnison, where larger homes sat behind white picket fences and trees provided blessed shade. Her own simple cotton dress was clean but patched in places, and she felt acutely aware of the contrast as she knocked on the Wilkins' front door. Mrs. Wilkins herself answered, a severe woman with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Mrs. Gardner, is the dress finished?" "Yes, madam." "I believe you will be very pleased with it." Katherine unwrapped the garment, holding it up for inspection. The banker's wife examined every seam with a critical eye, searching for flaws. Katherine waited patiently, confident in her craftsmanship. Finally, Mrs. Wilkins gave a curt nod. "It will do. The embroidery is a nice touch." "Thank you, madam. That will be $7 as we agreed." Mrs. Wilkins' mouth tightened. "I was thinking $5 would be more appropriate. After all, you did take an extra week to complete it." Katherine felt her jaw clench. She had taken the extra week because Mrs. Wilkins had changed her specifications twice, requiring Katherine to take apart and re-sew entire sections. "With respect, madam, We agreed on $7. The changes you requested added considerable time to the work. Are you arguing with me, Mrs. Wilkins drew herself up haughtily. Perhaps I should take my business elsewhere. The threat hung in the air between them. Katherine knew that losing Mrs. Wilkins as a customer would hurt, but she also knew that accepting less than agreed-upon payment would set a precedent she could not afford. Other customers would expect the same discount, and before long, she would be working for nothing. "I am not arguing, madam," Katherine said quietly but firmly. "I am simply asking for the payment we agreed upon. If you prefer to take your business elsewhere in the future, I will understand. But this dress was completed according to your specifications, and the price was $7. For a long moment, Mrs. Wilkins stared at her, clearly unused to being contradicted. Then, with visible irritation, she turned and retrieved her purse from a nearby table. She counted out $7 in coins with deliberate slowness, practically throwing them into Katherine's outstretched hand. "I suppose I will have to find someone more accommodating for my fall wardrobe," Mrs. Wilkins said coldly. "I wish you luck in your search, madam," Katherine said, maintaining her composure even as her stomach churned with anxiety about losing a regular customer. She pocketed the coins, nodded politely, and left before her pride could cost her anything else. Walking back toward the center of town, Katherine tried to calculate her finances. The $7 would cover part of the rent, but she still needed at least another $8 to make the full amount. She had 2 more dress orders in progress, but the customers were not expecting them until next week, which would be too late for Mr. Calloway's deadline. She was so lost in thought that she nearly walked straight into someone coming out of the general store. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her, and she looked up to find herself face to face with Ryan Masters. "Mrs. Gardner," he said, his surprise evident. "We seem to make a habit of unexpected meetings." "Mr. Masters," Katherine said, stepping back quickly, aware of his hands on her shoulders and the impropriety of such contact. "I apologize. I was not watching where I was going. No harm done." Ryan smiled, and Katherine noticed how the expression transformed his face, softening the hard edges that trail life had carved there. "I was just picking up some supplies before heading out to the Triple Creek Ranch. Thought I would try my luck at getting hired on." "I hope it goes well for you," Katherine said sincerely. "Say, if you have a moment, could I ask you something?" Ryan glanced around, then gestured toward the small cafe Katherine had recommended the previous day. "Maybe over a cup of coffee." "I promise it will only take a few minutes of your time, and I would be grateful for the local insight." Katherine hesitated. She needed to get to the supply wagon before all the good fabric was picked over, but something in Ryan's expression made her pause. He looked hopeful but uncertain, like a man trying to make a good decision and wanting to get it right. "I suppose a few minutes would not hurt," she heard herself saying. The cafe was nearly empty at mid-morning, just an older couple in the corner and the owner, Mr. Garcia, behind the counter. Ryan held the door for Katherine and then pulled out a chair for her at a small table near the window. Such courtesies were automatic for him, she realized, not put on for show. "2 coffees, please," Ryan said to Mr. Garcia, then turned his attention to Katherine. "I appreciate you taking the time. I know you must be busy. What did you want to ask me?" Ryan leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "I have been drifting for a long time, Mrs. Gardner, following cattle drives, taking short-term work here and there, but I am tired of it. I want to put down roots, build something lasting. The question is whether Gunnison is the right place to do that. You have lived here for a while, I assume. What is your honest assessment of this town?" Katherine considered the question carefully. Mr. Garcia brought their coffee, giving her a moment to gather her thoughts. Gunnison is like most small towns, she said finally. It has good people and narrow-minded ones. The land around here is beautiful, and there are opportunities for those willing to work hard. The winters can be brutal, but the summers make up for it. And the people, how do they treat outsiders? Catherine's hand tightened slightly on her coffee cup. That depends on the outsider. If you prove yourself reliable and respectable, most will accept you eventually. If you give them reason to judge you, they will do so without mercy. Ryan's perceptive gaze studied her face. Speaking from experience, "My situation is complicated," Katherine said carefully. "My husband left me with 3 children and no explanation. In the eyes of many here, that makes me either a failure as a wife or a woman of questionable morals. Never mind that I had no control over his choices. That is remarkably unfair. Life often is." Katherine took a sip of coffee, finding it strong and hot, exactly what she needed. "But I manage. My point is that Gunnison offers chances for a fresh start, but only if you are willing to work for acceptance." Ryan nodded slowly. "I appreciate your honesty. Most people would paint a prettier picture, trying to make their town sound perfect. I do not see the point in dishonesty. You asked for the truth and I gave it to you. That is refreshing." Ryan's smile returned, warmer this time. "I have found that truth is a rare commodity. People often prefer comfortable lies." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, drinking their coffee. Katherine found herself relaxing in Ryan's presence in a way she rarely did with anyone. There was something solid about him, dependable. Or perhaps she was just lonely and reading too much into simple kindness. "I should let you get on with your day," Ryan said, finishing his coffee. "But before you go, I wanted to tell you something. Yesterday, when I helped with the window situation, it was not pity that motivated me. It was respect. You stood there with your children, facing down a man who was publicly humiliating you, and you never once backed down or showed weakness. That takes strength." Katherine felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I did what any mother would do." "No, you did what a strong woman would do. There is a difference." Ryan stood and placed some coins on the table to cover the coffee. "I hope things work out well for you, Mrs. Gardner. You deserve better than the hand life has dealt you." He left before Katherine could formulate a response, the door closing softly behind him. She sat alone with her coffee, her mind whirling with unexpected emotions. Ryan Masters saw her not as an object of pity or scandal, but as a capable woman worthy of respect. The feeling was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Katherine forced herself to finish her coffee and leave. She had responsibilities, fabric to buy, children waiting at home. There was no time for daydreaming about handsome cowboys, no matter how kind they might be. The supply wagon had already been picked over by the time she arrived. But Katherine managed to find decent calico fabric for a reasonable price. She also purchased thread and some buttons she had been needing. The vendor, a grizzled man named Mr. Pritchard who traveled the circuit selling dry goods, gave her a discount on the buttons when she bought in bulk. "You do good work, Mrs. Gardner," he said as he wrapped her purchases. "I have heard tell from several ladies who were mighty pleased with dresses you made them. You ever think about advertising beyond Gunnison? Could be you would get more business from the surrounding settlements." Katherine had not considered that possibility. "How would I even go about such a thing?" "Well, I travel to 4 different towns on my circuit. I could spread the word for you if you like. No charge, just trying to help a hard-working lady get ahead." "That is very kind of you, Mr. Pritchard. Thank you." Walking home with her parcels, Katherine felt a small spark of hope. Maybe things were beginning to look up. She had stood up to Mrs. Wilkins and gotten her full payment. Mr. Pritchard had offered to help expand her business, and she had $7 toward the rent. If she could finish the other 2 dresses quickly and convince the customers to pay early, she might just make it through another month. She arrived home to find Thomas teaching Molly her letters while James napped on the bed. The domestic scene made her heart swell with love and determination. These children were her world, her reason for fighting through each difficult day. Whatever happened, she would find a way to give them a good life. "Mama, did you get the fabric?" Molly asked, looking up from the slate where Thomas had drawn letters. "I did, sweetheart." "Very pretty calico that will make nice dresses for Mrs. Chen's daughters." "The lady at the boarding house?" Thomas asked. "Yes. She commissioned 2 dresses for her girls, which means Mama will have more work to keep us fed." Katherine set down her parcels and began unpacking the fabric, her mind already planning the cuts and patterns. The afternoon passed in focused work. Katherine had learned to sew while working despite the noise and activity of children playing around her. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, cutting fabric, pinning patterns, making the first stitches. Thomas kept his siblings entertained with stories and games, proving once again that he was mature beyond his 8 years. Evening brought a simple meal of vegetable stew made with the last of their garden produce, and bread Katherine had baked the previous day. As they ate together at their small table, Katherine listened to her children chatter about their day, their small triumphs and concerns. Molly had learned to write her name. James had built an impressive tower of wooden blocks before knocking it down gleefully, and Thomas had finished reading the entire fairy tale book. "Mama, when will we get new books?" Thomas asked wistfully. "When we have a little extra money saved," Katherine promised, though she had no idea when that might be. Books were expensive luxuries, far down on the list of priorities below food and rent and shoes for growing feet. After the children were asleep, Katherine worked by candlelight on the dresses for Mrs. Chen's daughters. Her eyes burned with fatigue, but she pushed through, knowing that every stitch brought her closer to financial security. The house was quiet except for the gentle breathing of her children and the occasional pop from the dying fire in the stove. She was so focused on her sewing that the knock on the door made her jump, nearly stabbing herself with the needle. Who would be calling at this hour? Katherine glanced at her sleeping children, then moved cautiously to the door. "Who is there?" she called softly. "Ryan Masters, madam. I apologize for the late hour, but I have something I need to discuss with you." Katherine's heart began to race. She opened the door a crack, peering out. Ryan stood on her small porch, hat in hand, looking dusty and tired. His horse was tied to the post at the edge of her property. "Mr. Masters, it is quite late," Katherine said, very aware of the impropriety of a single woman receiving a male visitor after dark. "I know, and I would not intrude except that this concerns you directly." Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "May I speak with you? Just for a moment." Katherine hesitated, then stepped outside, closing the door softly behind her. The night air was cooler than the stifling interior of the house, and stars blazed overhead in the vast Colorado sky. "What is this about?" Katherine asked, wrapping her arms around herself. "I got hired at the Triple Creek Ranch," Ryan said. "Mr. Patterson is a good man, fair employer. The pay is decent, and there is a bunkhouse for the hands. But while I was in town earlier, I heard some things that concerned me." Katherine's stomach tightened. "What things?" "Your landlord, Mr. Calloway, was at the saloon bragging about how he planned to evict you when you could not make rent this month. He was saying some unpleasant things about what you might have to do to earn money if you lost your home." Anger and humiliation flared hot in Katherine's chest. She should have known that Calloway would spread rumors. The man had been making inappropriate suggestions for months, hinting that he might be lenient on rent in exchange for certain favors. Katherine had rebuffed him firmly, which had apparently earned his resentment. "Mr. Calloway will get his rent," Katherine said tightly. "I will make certain of it." "I have no doubt you would find a way," Ryan said gently, "but I wanted to offer an alternative. I could lend you the money you need for rent. You could pay me back when you are able, no interest, no strings attached." "Absolutely not," Katherine said immediately. "You already paid $20 for the window incident. I will not take more charity from you, Mr. Masters, no matter how kindly meant." "Then what if it was not charity? What if I hired you for something?" Katherine looked at him suspiciously. "Hired me for what?" "My shirts and trousers are in sorry shape after months on the trail. I need new clothes, properly made. You are a seamstress. I could pay you in advance for several shirts and 2 pairs of trousers. That should cover what you need for rent, and you would be earning it through your work." It was a transparent excuse to give her money, but the fiction of a business transaction made it easier to accept. Katherine studied Ryan's face in the moonlight, trying to understand why this stranger was so determined to help her. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You do not know me. You have no obligation to involve yourself in my problems." Ryan was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his words carefully. "When I was 16, my mother found herself in a situation much like yours. My father had died, leaving her with 3 children and debts she could not pay. A kind man in our town helped her out, asked for nothing in return. He just said that when she was able, she should help someone else who needed it. I am just passing along the favor." The simple honesty of his answer disarmed Katherine's defenses. "Your mother, did she manage?" "She did. Took her several years, but she built a good life for us. She runs a boarding house in San Antonio now, does quite well for herself." Pride colored Ryan's voice. "She taught me that strength is not about never needing help. It is about accepting help when offered and then extending your hand to others when you are able." Katherine felt tears prick at her eyes. She was so tired of fighting alone, so exhausted from the constant struggle to keep her children fed and housed. The offer of help, presented in a way that preserved her dignity, was almost too much. "If I accept, I will make you the finest shirts you have ever owned," she said, her voice rough with emotion. "I have no doubt of that, Mrs. Gardner." Ryan reached into his vest and pulled out a small leather pouch. "Will $15 cover what you need for the rent?" "That is too much for the clothes." "Then make me an extra shirt, or keep the surplus as an emergency fund. I trust you to decide what is fair." He pressed the pouch into her hand before she could protest further. The weight of the coins felt both heavy and relieving, a burden and a salvation in equal measure. "Thank you," Katherine whispered. "I will have your clothes ready within 2 weeks. No rush. Focus on your other orders first." Ryan settled his hat back on his head. "I should let you get back to your work. I just wanted to make sure you knew you had options before Calloway could back you into a corner." "Mr. Masters," Katherine said as he turned to leave, "your mother must be very proud of the man you became." Even in the dim light, she could see his smile. "I hope so. Good night, Mrs. Gardner." "Good night." Katherine stood on her porch for a long time after Ryan rode away, the pouch of coins clutched in her hand. She felt something shifting inside her, a loosening of the tight knot of fear and desperation that had lived in her chest for 2 years. Ryan Masters had appeared in her life like a character from one of Thomas's fairy tales, offering help without judgment or expectation of repayment beyond honest work. It was dangerous to rely on anyone, she reminded herself. She had learned that lesson when Robert left. But there was a difference between relying on someone and accepting help when offered. One required trust that could be shattered. The other simply required the humility to admit she could not do everything alone. The next morning, Catherine went to Mr. Calloway's office and paid her rent in full, 2 weeks early. The landlord's expression of surprise and disappointment was worth savoring. He had clearly been counting on her inability to pay, anticipating the leverage it would give him. Handing over the exact amount due and watching his schemes crumble brought Catherine a satisfaction she had not felt in months. "The rent for next month will be on time as well," Catherine said coolly. "I have secured additional work that will provide steady income." "I see," Mr. Calloway said, his calculating eyes trying to work out where she had gotten the money. "Well, that is good news, Mrs. Gardner. Very good news indeed." Catherine left his office with her head high, feeling lighter than she had in ages. The remaining money from Ryan went into her emergency tin, hidden beneath a loose floorboard under the bed. It was not much, but it was a cushion against disaster, a small protection for her children. Over the next week, Catherine threw herself into her sewing with renewed energy. She completed the dresses for Mrs. Chen's daughters, earning praise and prompt payment. She finished the 2 outstanding orders and then began work on Ryan's clothes. She took special care with his garments, using her best fabric and most meticulous stitching. If he was going to claim this was a business transaction, she would ensure he got value for his money. Thomas returned to school when the fall term began, which meant Catherine had to manage with Molly and James during the day. Her daughter was a good helper, keeping James entertained while Catherine worked. The little boy was energetic and curious, constantly getting into things, but his cheerful disposition made it hard to stay frustrated with him. On the 4th day of school, Thomas came home with a bloody nose and torn shirt. Catherine's heart sank, fearing another incident like the broken window. "What happened?" she asked, kneeling to examine his face. "Billy Henderson was bothering Susie Miller," Thomas said, his voice nasal from the bloody nose. "Making her cry. I told him to stop and he pushed me, so I pushed him back. Then we fought." Catherine cleaned his face with a wet cloth, trying to decide how to handle this. "Did you start the actual fight?" "No, Mama. He threw the first punch. I just defended myself." "And Susie Miller, is she all right?" "Yes, Mama. Billy left her alone after I pushed him." It was hard to be angry when her son had been defending someone weaker. Catherine sighed, pulling Thomas into a hug. "You have a good heart, sweetheart, but you need to be smarter about these things. What does Mr. Henderson say?" "He sent a note." Thomas pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket. The note requested Catherine's presence at the school the next morning to discuss Thomas's behavior. Catherine's jaw tightened. She could guess how this would go. Billy Henderson's father was an established merchant, and she was a woman barely scraping by. The blame would fall on Thomas, regardless of the circumstances. That evening, after the children were in bed, Catherine sat at her table with the finished shirts for Ryan spread before her. They had turned out beautifully, the stitching precise, the fit carefully calculated based on measurements she had taken from his old shirt. She had used quality cotton in a deep blue that would complement his eyes, and she had added small but thoughtful details like reinforced seams and an extra button sewn inside for replacement. She was folding them carefully when another knock came at the door. This time she was not surprised to find Ryan Masters on her porch. He had fallen into the habit of stopping by every few days after finishing work at the ranch, ostensibly to check on the progress of his clothes, but really, Catherine suspected, to check on her. "Mr. Masters," she greeted him. "Your shirts are actually finished. Your timing is perfect." "Are they? That is wonderful." Ryan stepped inside when she gestured, removing his hat. His presence seemed to fill the small space, and Catherine was suddenly very aware of being alone with him, her children asleep only feet away. She showed him the shirts, watching his face as he examined her work. His expression shifted from polite interest to genuine admiration. "Mrs. Gardner, these are exceptional," Ryan said, running his fingers over the neat stitching. "I have never owned shirts this well made." "I told you I would make you the finest shirts you had ever owned," Katherine said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "You certainly delivered on that promise." Ryan carefully refolded one of the shirts. "These are worth far more than I paid you. I should give you additional money." "Absolutely not. We had an agreement and I am satisfied with the terms." Katherine handed him the wrapped bundle of shirts. "I still need to make your trousers, but that will take another week. Getting the fit right requires more time. Whenever you can manage it is fine." Ryan held the bundle but made no move to leave. "Is something wrong? You seem troubled." Katherine had not realized her worry was so visible. She explained about Thomas's fight at school and the meeting requested for the next morning. "The problem is that the Hendersons have standing in this town, and I do not," Katherine said, sitting down at the table with a weary sigh. "It does not matter that Thomas was defending another child. He will be labeled a troublemaker, and I will be blamed for not controlling him properly." Ryan set down the bundle of shirts and took the seat across from her. "Would you like me to come with you to the meeting?" Katherine looked up in surprise. "Why would you do that?" "Because sometimes having someone stand with you makes a difference. The Hendersons might think twice about railroading you if they know you are not alone. Mr. Masters, you have already done so much. I cannot keep accepting your help." "You are not accepting charity. You are accepting the support of a friend. There is a difference." The word friend hung in the air between them. Katherine realized that was what Ryan had become, somehow, in the space of less than 2 weeks. A friend. She had not had a real friend since Robert left, since the other women of Gunnison had begun treating her with suspicion and judgment. "I would appreciate the company," Katherine admitted. "Though I warn you, it may not be pleasant. I have survived cattle stampedes and bar fights. I think I can handle a school meeting." His confidence was reassuring, and when he smiled, Katherine felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with friendship, and everything to do with the growing attraction she was trying to ignore. The next morning, Katherine dressed in her best dress, a simple but well-made garment in dark green that brought out her eyes. She arranged her auburn hair carefully and made sure Thomas was clean and presentable. Ryan arrived just as she was getting ready to leave, riding his horse and leading a gentle mare. "Thought you might like to ride instead of walk," he said, dismounting. "Save time and arrive fresh." Katherine had not ridden a horse in years, but she managed to mount the mare with Ryan's assistance. Thomas rode in front of Ryan, his eyes wide with excitement at being on such a tall horse. They made quite a picture riding through town, Katherine knew, and she could feel curious eyes watching from windows and doorways. The schoolhouse was a simple wooden building at the edge of town. The teacher, Miss Sarah Winters, was a young woman from Denver who had only been in Gunnison for a year. She greeted them at the door with a professional but friendly demeanor. "Mrs. Gardner, thank you for coming. And you are Ryan Masters, madam, a friend of the family." If Miss Winters found it odd that Katherine had brought a male friend to the meeting, she did not comment. She led them inside to where Mr. and Mrs. Henderson sat with their son Billy, who sported a black eye that Thomas had apparently given him. Mr. Henderson's face darkened when he saw Ryan. "What is he doing here? This is a school matter, not a public spectacle." "Mr. Masters is here at my invitation," Katherine said calmly, "as a friend and witness to this conversation." "Witness?" Mrs. Henderson drew herself up indignantly. "Are you suggesting we need witnessing?" "I am suggesting that having an impartial third party present benefits everyone," Katherine replied. She had learned from her encounter with Mrs. Wilkins that she could not afford to back down when confronted with bullies, even well-dressed ones. Miss Winters gestured everyone to seats in the classroom. Perhaps we should focus on the matter at hand. Thomas and Billy were involved in a physical altercation yesterday. I would like to hear from both boys what happened, and then we can discuss how to proceed. Billy spoke first, painting a picture of Thomas as the aggressor who had attacked him without provocation. It was a complete fabrication, but the boy told it with such conviction that Katherine felt a chill. This was the problem with fighting against people with power and status. Truth mattered less than perception. When it was Thomas's turn, her son spoke quietly but clearly, explaining how Billy had been tormenting Susie Miller, reducing the shy girl to tears. He admitted to pushing Billy but maintained that Billy had thrown the first punch. "Is this true about Susie Miller?" Miss Winters asked. "The Miller girl is too sensitive," Mrs. Henderson said dismissively. "Boys tease. It is natural." "Tormenting a classmate until she cries is not natural, Mrs. Henderson," Miss Winters said firmly. "It is bullying, and I have witnessed Billy engaging in such behavior before." The Hendersons looked shocked that the teacher would contradict them. Mr. Henderson's face reddened. "My son is being unfairly characterized." "Your son has a pattern of targeting weaker students," Miss Winters said. "I have documented instances. Thomas, on the other hand, has been a model student despite the challenges of his family situation. I believe his account of what happened." Katherine felt a surge of gratitude toward the young teacher. Someone in authority was finally seeing the truth instead of making assumptions based on social standing. "This is outrageous," Mr. Henderson blustered. "I will speak to the school board about your bias, Miss Winters." "You are welcome to do so," Miss Winters said calmly. "I maintain detailed records of all classroom incidents. The board will see that I have been patient with Billy's behavior for months, hoping he would mature. Clearly, more direct intervention is needed." Ryan spoke for the first time, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "Seems to me that both boys should face consequences for fighting, regardless of who started it. But perhaps Billy also needs to face consequences for bullying, which is the action that led to the fight in the first place." His reasonable tone and outsider perspective seemed to shift something in the room. Even the Hendersons paused, recognizing that they were not going to steamroll this meeting as they had perhaps expected. After further discussion, it was decided that both boys would miss 2 days of recess and would have to write letters of apology. Thomas to Billy for hitting him, and Billy to both Thomas and Susie Miller for his bullying behavior. It was not perfect, but it was fair, and Katherine left the schoolhouse feeling vindicated. "Thank you," she said to Ryan as they rode back toward her house. "Having you there made a difference." "Miss Winters made the difference," Ryan said. "She is a good teacher, willing to stand up for what is right even when it is not convenient. Still, I appreciate you coming. The Hendersons are not accustomed to being challenged." Ryan helped her down from the horse when they reached her house, his hands steady on her waist. For a moment they stood close together and Katherine felt her breath catch at the intensity in his eyes. "Katherine," he said softly, using her given name for the first time, "I need to tell you something." Her heart began to pound. "What is it?" "I have been coming by here under the excuse of checking on my clothes, but the truth is, I just want to see you. I think about you constantly. You are one of the strongest, most capable women I have ever met, and I find myself drawn to you in a way I have not felt for anyone in a long time." Katherine's mind raced. Part of her wanted to retreat, to protect herself from the risk of being hurt again. But another part, a part that had been dormant for 2 years, responded to the warmth in Ryan's gaze, to the respect and admiration she saw there. "I have children," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "3 children who depend on me. I cannot afford to make foolish decisions based on feelings that might not last. I know you have children. That is not a deterrent to me. In fact, it is part of what I admire about you. You put them first always. That speaks to the kind of person you are. You barely know me, Ryan. Then let me know you better. Let me court you properly with your children present, no secrets or hiding. If you find I am not worthy of your trust, you can send me away. But at least give me a chance to prove myself. Katherine looked into his eyes and saw sincerity there, and hope, and something deeper that made her chest tight. She thought of her children, how they had warmed to Ryan, how Thomas had started looking up to him, how even shy Molly smiled when he visited. She thought of how alone she had been, how hard it had been to carry every burden by herself. I have 3 children, she said again, but this time it was not a warning. It was a test, a challenge. Ryan's smile was gentle and genuine. Then I will have 4 reasons to stay. The words settled over Katherine like a warm blanket on a cold night. 4 reasons to stay. Not despite her children, but because of them, because of her. She felt tears slip down her cheeks, unexpected and unstoppable. "Why are you crying?" Ryan asked, concern crossing his face. "Because nobody has ever said anything like that to me before. When I told Robert I was pregnant the 3rd time, he looked at me like I had ruined his life. But you speak as if my children are something to be treasured, not endured. They are treasures. Anyone with eyes can see that." Ryan gently wiped her tears with his thumb, the gesture tender and intimate. "So will you let me court you, Katherine Gardner? Will you give me a chance to show you that not all men run when things get difficult?" "Yes," Katherine whispered. "Yes, I will." Over the following weeks, Ryan became a steady presence in Katherine's life and the lives of her children. He maintained propriety, never visiting late at night or without purpose, always conscious of her reputation. But his courtship was unmistakable to anyone who paid attention. He brought small gifts for the children, always thoughtful and appropriate. A new book of stories for Thomas, who devoured it eagerly. A beautiful hair ribbon for Molly that made the little girl spin with delight. A carved wooden horse for James that became the boy's constant companion. For Katherine, he brought things more practical but chosen with care. Quality thread in colors she needed, buttons that were hard to find in Gunnison, a new pair of sewing scissors that cut fabric like butter. The people of Gunnison began to notice. Katherine could feel the shift in how she was treated. Some of the women who had been coldly polite began to warm slightly, perhaps recognizing that Ryan Masters' interest in her suggested she was more respectable than they had assumed. Others grew more hostile, jealous, or judgmental about a widow attracting such an eligible man. Katherine tried not to care about either reaction. For the first time in years, she was happy. Genuinely. Deeply happy in a way that had nothing to do with financial security or social standing, and everything to do with the warmth that flooded her chest when Ryan smiled at her, when he listened to her talk about her work, when he played with her children like they were precious to him. Ryan was good with the children, patient in ways Robert had never been. He taught Thomas to ride properly, spending hours in the evenings after ranch work letting the boy practice on his gentle mare. He sat through Molly's endless questions about horses and clouds, and why the sky was blue, answering each one with serious consideration. He let James climb all over him, the little boy fascinated by Ryan's size and strength. One evening in late September, Ryan arrived with Mr. Patterson from the Triple Creek Ranch. The older rancher was a weathered man in his 60s with kind eyes and a shrewd business sense. "Mrs. Gardner," Mr. Patterson said, removing his hat. "Ryan here tells me you are the finest seamstress in these parts. I was wondering if you might be willing to take on a large commission." "What kind of commission?" Katherine asked, gesturing for the men to sit. I have 4 ranch hands plus Ryan, and we are all in need of new work shirts before winter sets in. That is 5 shirts each, so 25 total. I am willing to pay good money for quality work, and Ryan assures me you deliver quality. Katherine's mind reeled. 25 shirts would take weeks to complete, but would bring in more money than she typically made in 2 months. That is a substantial order, Mr. Patterson. I could do it, but it would take time. Perhaps 6 weeks to do the job right. 6 weeks is acceptable. I will pay half up front and half upon completion. Does $2 per shirt sound fair? $50. Katherine tried to keep her expression neutral, but inside she was celebrating. $50 would solve so many problems, would give her a cushion to relax the constant anxiety about money. That sounds very fair, sir. I accept the commission. After Mr. Patterson left, Ryan stayed behind, helping Thomas with reading while Katherine put James and Molly to bed. When the children were settled, Katherine found Ryan and Thomas at the table, bent over the book together. You are good with him, Katherine said softly, watching them. Ryan looked up, his expression warm. He is a smart boy, reads better than some grown men I know. Thomas beamed at the praise. Ryan is teaching me about constellations, Mama. Did you know you can navigate by the stars? I did not know that. You will have to teach me what you learn. After Thomas went to bed, Katherine and Ryan sat together at the table, the lamp burning low between them. These quiet moments had become Katherine's favorite part of the day, when the children were asleep and she could talk with Ryan without distraction. Thank you for bringing Mr. Patterson by, Katherine said. That commission will make a real difference. You deserve the work. Your skills should be properly compensated. Ryan reached across the table and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle on hers. Katherine, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. What is it? Are you happy with this courtship, with me being around? Because if you are doing this out of gratitude or obligation, I would rather know now. Katherine looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, at the vulnerability she saw there. I am happier than I have been in years, she said truthfully. You make me feel valued and respected, like I matter for who I am, not just for what I can do or provide. That is a gift, Ryan. You do matter. To me, you matter tremendously. I feel the same way about you, but I am also terrified. Of what? Of depending on you and having you leave. Of my children growing attached and losing another father figure. Of being hurt again. The words spilled out, raw and honest. Ryan squeezed her hand gently. I cannot promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Life does not work that way, but I can promise that I will not run when things get hard. I will not abandon you or your children. My word means something, Katherine. When I commit to something, I see it through. How can I trust that? Watch me. Test me. I am not asking you to trust blindly. I am asking you to give me chances to prove myself worthy of that trust. Judge me by my actions, not my words. It was a fair answer, honest and realistic. Katherine appreciated that he did not make grand promises or sweep her concerns aside. Then I will watch and see, she said. And so far what I have seen is a good man. I will do my best to keep showing you that man. As autumn deepened into October, Ryan continued to prove himself reliable and steady. He showed up when he said he would. He kept his promises to the children. He worked hard at the ranch and earned respect from Mr. Patterson and the other hands. When Katherine was overwhelmed with the shirt order, he helped by watching the children so she could work uninterrupted. The town's perception of Katherine began to shift more noticeably. Mr. Henderson stopped treating her with outright hostility, though he remained cold. Mrs. Chen invited Katherine to join a church sewing circle, the first social invitation she had received in 2 years. Even Mr. Calloway became more polite, recognizing that Katherine now had someone who would stand up for her if needed. But not everyone was pleased with the developing romance. Mrs. Peterson, the widow who had always looked down on Katherine, began spreading rumors that Katherine had trapped poor Mr. Masters with feminine wiles, taking advantage of a lonely cowboy's good nature. Other women whispered that it was inappropriate for Katherine to court so openly when her husband might still be alive somewhere. Katherine tried to ignore the gossip, but it stung. One particularly difficult day, after overhearing Mrs. Peterson telling someone that Katherine was no better than a saloon girl, she came home in tears. Ryan arrived to find her red-eyed and upset, the children concerned and hovering around her. He sent Thomas to take Molly and James outside to play, then sat beside Katherine on the bed. "Tell me what happened," he said gently. Katherine explained about the gossip, about the cruel things being said. "Maybe they are right. Maybe I am being inappropriate. Robert could still be alive, technically. I have no proof he is dead." "You believe he is alive?" "No. If he were alive and wanted to come back, he would have by now. It has been over 2 years. Then you are not married in any meaningful sense. That man abandoned you and his children. You owe him nothing, Katherine. Not loyalty, not fidelity, not waiting. The law might say differently. The law also says that after a certain period of absence without contact, a marriage can be dissolved. We could pursue that if you want the legal clarity. But morally, ethically, you are free. Do not let bitter old women make you doubt that." Katherine leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Why do they hate me so much? What did I do besides try to survive? You did not do anything. They hate that you are surviving despite what happened to you. They hate that you are strong and capable. They hate that a good man sees worth in you. It says more about them than about you. I wish their words did not hurt. I know. But do not let them steal your happiness. We have something good here, Katherine. Do not throw it away because small-minded people cannot see past their own prejudices." Ryan was right, Katherine knew. She had spent too long letting other people's opinions shape her life. It was time to focus on what truly mattered: her children, her work, and this unexpected relationship that had brought joy back into her world. November arrived with the first real cold, a sharp wind that promised snow to come. Katherine finished the commission for Mr. Patterson, delivering 25 perfectly crafted shirts that earned her the full $50 and praise from the rancher. With that money, she paid 2 months' rent in advance, bought winter clothes for the children, and still had enough left to save. For the first time since Robert left, Katherine felt financially stable. The constant fear that had lived in her gut began to ease. She could breathe without panic about where the next meal would come from. Ryan continued his courtship with patience and consistency. He never pushed for more than Katherine was ready to give, content with hand-holding and the occasional chaste kiss on her doorstep. But the tension between them was building, a current of desire and longing that grew stronger each time they were together. One evening in late November, after the children were asleep, Ryan and Katherine sat together on her porch despite the cold. She was wrapped in a heavy shawl and he sat close, blocking the wind with his body. "I need to tell you something," Ryan said, his voice serious. "Mr. Patterson has offered to sell me a portion of his land. He is getting older and wants to reduce his workload. He said if I can raise half the money for a down payment, he will carry the note for the rest." Katherine's heart began to race. "That is wonderful, Ryan. What an opportunity." "It is, but here is the thing. I want to do this, want to build something permanent here in Gunnison. But I also want to be clear that I am not doing this just for myself." He turned to face her fully. "Katherine, I am building a future that I hope will include you and your children. I need to know if that is something you want too. Are you asking what I think you are asking? I am asking if you would consider marrying me. Not right away, he added quickly. I know we have only been courting for a few months, but I want you to know my intentions are serious. I am in this for the long term. When you are ready, if you are ready, I want to make you my wife and your children mine. Katherine felt tears well up, but these were tears of joy, not sorrow. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, when the time is right, I want to marry you, Ryan Masters. Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her close. I love you, Katherine. I have loved you since the day I saw you standing up to Mr. Henderson, fierce and strong and refusing to back down. I want to spend my life showing you that love. I love you too, Katherine whispered against his chest. I did not think I could feel this way again, but you have given me back something I thought I lost. Hope, joy, the belief that good things can still happen. They sat together under the stars, talking about the future they would build together. Ryan described the land Mr. Patterson was offering, good grazing land with a creek running through it, perfect for building a house and raising cattle. Katherine shared her dreams of expanding her sewing business, maybe even opening a small shop in town someday. What about the children? Katherine asked. Are you truly ready to take on 3 children as your own? Katherine, I already think of them as mine. Thomas is brave and smart. Molly is sweet and curious. James is full of joy and energy. They are wonderful children because you are a wonderful mother. I would be honored to be their father. They need a father. A real father who will not leave. Then that is what I will be. I promise you, Katherine. I promise all of you. As winter set in, Ryan worked to save money for the land purchase while also helping Katherine whenever she needed it. He chopped wood to keep her house warm, made repairs to the roof before the heavy snows came, and continued to spend evenings with the family, becoming as much a part of their lives as if he already lived there. Christmas approached, and Katherine worried about providing gifts for the children on her limited budget. Ryan arrived one evening with an armload of packages. What is all this? Katherine asked. Just some things I thought the children might enjoy. If you are comfortable with me giving them gifts, that is. Inside the packages were thoughtful presents. A new hat and gloves for Thomas, a beautiful doll for Molly that must have cost a small fortune, building blocks for James, and for Katherine. A bolt of the finest fabric she had ever seen, deep burgundy silk that would make a stunning dress. Ryan, this is too much, Katherine protested, running her hands over the silk. It is not too much. It is what I want to do for my family, my family. The words made Katherine's heart sing. She was not alone anymore. She had Ryan and he had them, and together they were building something beautiful. On Christmas Day, Katherine cooked a special meal with food Ryan had provided. They gathered around her small table, the 5 of them squeezed in close, and Ryan led them in saying grace. Thomas sat up straight and proud, clearly viewing Ryan as a role model. Molly could not stop smiling, clutching her new doll. James banged his blocks together happily, and Katherine felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. After the meal, while the children played with their gifts, Ryan and Katherine stood together at the window, watching snow fall outside. I have something else for you, Ryan said, pulling a small box from his pocket. I know we said we would wait to make things official, but I wanted you to have this. Inside the box was a ring, simple but beautiful, a gold band with a small sapphire stone. It was my grandmother's, Ryan explained. My mother gave it to me when I left Texas, said I should give it to the woman I wanted to marry. If you will have it, if you will have me. Katherine looked at the ring, then at Ryan's hopeful face, then at her children playing peacefully nearby. Everything she could want was right here in this small house. this makeshift family that had come together against all odds. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it." Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. Then he kissed her, tender and sweet, a kiss that held promises of all the tomorrows they would share. When they broke apart, they found 3 children staring at them with wide eyes. "Does this mean Ryan is going to be our new papa?" Thomas asked, his voice full of hope. Katherine looked at Ryan, who nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. Ryan and I are going to get married, which means he will be your father." The children erupted in excitement. Molly ran to hug Ryan's legs. Thomas grinned wider than Katherine had seen in years, and even little James toddled over, arms raised to be picked up. Ryan scooped up James and Molly together, laughing as they both talked at once, asking questions about when the wedding would be and if they would all live together. "We will work out all the details," Ryan assured them. "But yes, we will all be together as a real family." Katherine watched the man she loved with her children and felt her heart might burst from happiness. After so much struggle and pain, she had found something precious. A man who saw her children not as burdens but as blessings, who wanted to build a life with all of them, not despite the complications but because of the complete package they represented. In the weeks that followed, Ryan finalized the land purchase with Mr. Patterson, putting down his savings and signing a note for the rest. The land was beautiful, and Ryan immediately began making plans to build a house, something larger than Katherine's rented place, with room for everyone. The question of Katherine's marriage to Robert had to be addressed before she and Ryan could legally wed. Ryan hired a lawyer from Denver who advised that given Robert's absence for over 2 years without any contact or support, Katherine could petition for a legal dissolution based on abandonment. The process would take several months, but it would give them the legal standing they needed. Some in town criticized the decision, particularly Mrs. Peterson and her circle of gossips, but Katherine found she cared less and less about their opinions. She had Ryan's love, her children's happiness, and her own growing sense of peace. What bitter strangers thought no longer had power over her. Spring came early in 1879, melting the snow and revealing the greening land Ryan now owned. He worked with the other ranch hands to build a house, a sturdy structure with 3 bedrooms, a real kitchen, and a large main room. Katherine visited the building site whenever she could, watching their future home take shape board by board. Thomas helped with small tasks, learning carpentry skills from Ryan and the other men. Molly picked wildflowers and brought them to Katherine, declaring they would plant a garden at the new house. James toddled around, getting into everything, his laughter a constant soundtrack to the construction. In April, the legal dissolution of Katherine's marriage to Robert Gardner was finalized. She was officially free, no longer tied to a man who had abandoned her. The relief was immense, like a weight she had carried for years suddenly lifted from her shoulders. Ryan proposed again, properly this time in front of the children at their building site. He got down on one knee in the mud and sawdust, holding Katherine's hand. "Katherine Gardner, you have made me happier than I ever thought possible. You and your children are my whole world. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Katherine laughed through her tears. "I already said yes once, remember. But yes, again and always I will marry you, Ryan Masters." They set the wedding date for late May, giving them time to finish the house and for Katherine to make herself a wedding dress. She used the burgundy silk Ryan had given her for Christmas, creating a gown that was simple but elegant, fitted at the waist and falling in soft folds to the floor. The wedding was held at the small church in Gunnison on a beautiful spring day when the mountains were still capped with snow but the valley was full of flowers. Katherine had worried that few people would attend, given the gossip that had surrounded her, but she was surprised by the turnout. Mr. Patterson came, of course, and the ranch hands Ryan worked with. Mrs. Chen and her daughters came, and Miss Winters, the schoolteacher. Mr. Garcia from the cafe attended, and Mr. Pritchard, the traveling salesman, made sure his circuit brought him through Gunnison that week. Even some of the women who had been cold to Katherine showed up, perhaps recognizing that Ryan Masters was genuinely devoted to her, and that their judgment had been unwarranted. Thomas stood up as Ryan's best man, so proud in his new suit that Katherine thought her heart might burst. Molly was the flower girl, scattering petals with serious concentration. James sat in the front row with Mrs. Chen, who had volunteered to watch him during the ceremony. The Reverend kept the service simple and heartfelt. When he got to the vows, Ryan spoke clearly and firmly. "I, Ryan Masters, take you, Katherine Gardner, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and stand by you through whatever comes. I promise to be a true father to Thomas, Molly, and James, to raise them with love and guidance. I promise that our family will always be my first priority from this day until my last." Katherine's voice shook with emotion as she spoke her own vows. "I, Katherine Gardner, take you, Ryan Masters, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and build a life with you. I promise to trust you with my heart and my children's hearts. I promise that we will face everything together as partners from this day forward." When the Reverend pronounced them married, Ryan kissed Katherine with such tenderness that several people in the congregation openly wept. Katherine heard Molly's delighted giggle and Thomas's whispered, "Finally," and she smiled against Ryan's lips. The reception was held at their new house, still smelling of fresh wood and paint. People brought food and well wishes, and there was music and dancing. Katherine danced with Ryan, with her son, and even briefly with Mr. Patterson, who told her she had made an excellent choice in husbands. "Ryan is one of the best men I know," Mr. Patterson said. "He will take good care of you and those children." "I know he will," Katherine said, watching Ryan spin Molly in a dance while the little girl laughed joyfully. "He already does." As the sun set and guests began to leave, Katherine and Ryan stood together on the porch of their new home, watching the children play in the yard. Thomas was teaching Molly to skip stones in the creek while James dug in the dirt with a stick. "Are you happy?" Ryan asked, pulling Katherine close. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be. You gave me back my life, Ryan. You and the children, you are everything. You gave me a purpose beyond just working and drifting. You gave me a family, a home, a reason to build something that matters." Ryan kissed the top of her head. "I meant what I said in my vows. This family is my priority always." That night, after the children were settled in their new rooms, Katherine and Ryan retired to the bedroom they would share. It was their wedding night, and Katherine felt nervous despite the months of courtship. Her experience with Robert had not been particularly pleasant, and she worried about disappointing Ryan. But Ryan was patient and gentle, taking his time, making sure she was comfortable. He kissed away her fears and showed her that intimacy could be beautiful when it was based on love and mutual respect. Afterward, lying in his arms, Katherine felt a completeness she had never experienced before. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too, Katherine Masters," Ryan said, and Katherine smiled at hearing her new name. "You and our children, you are my whole world." The months that followed their wedding were busy and productive. Ryan worked his land, building up a small herd of cattle with Mr. Patterson's help and guidance. Katherine continued her sewing business, now working from home where she could keep an eye on the children and manage the household. She hired a young woman from town, Sarah Jenkins, to help with some of the simpler sewing tasks, which allowed Katherine to take on more complex commissions. Thomas thrived with Ryan's attention and guidance, growing more confident and responsible. He helped around the ranch, learning to care for cattle and horses, and his reading skills improved dramatically. Molly came out of her shell, becoming more outgoing and cheerful. James followed Ryan everywhere, the toddler clearly viewing Ryan as his hero. By autumn, Katherine realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with complex emotions. Joy at the idea of giving Ryan a child of his own, but also worry about how the existing children would react and whether she could manage 4 children. She told Ryan one evening after the children were in bed. They sat together in their bedroom, the lamp burning low. "Ryan, I have something to tell you." He looked up from the ranch accounts he was reviewing. "What is it? You look worried." "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Ryan's face went through several expressions in quick succession: surprise, joy, and then concern. "Are you happy about this? I know we did not plan it so soon." "I am happy," Katherine said, realizing as she spoke that it was true. "I am also a little overwhelmed, but mostly happy. What about you?" Ryan set aside his papers and pulled Katherine into his arms. "I am thrilled. A baby, Katherine, our baby." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "But I want to make sure you are okay. Pregnancy and childbirth are not easy, and you already have so much to manage." "We will manage together," Katherine said. "That is what partners do." They told the children the next morning at breakfast. Thomas looked thoughtful. Molly was excited about having a baby to help care for, and James did not fully understand but seemed to pick up on the general happiness. "Will you still be our papa?" Thomas asked Ryan, his voice small. Ryan understood immediately what the boy was really asking. "Always. You 3 are my children just as much as this baby will be. Nothing will change that. You understand?" Thomas nodded, relief evident on his face. "Yes, sir. I understand." As Katherine's pregnancy progressed, Ryan took on more of the household tasks, insisting she rest when she could. He cooked meals, helped with laundry, and managed the children when Katherine needed peace and quiet. His attentiveness never wavered, even when he was exhausted from ranch work. The baby was born in early May of 1880, exactly 1 year after Katherine and Ryan's wedding. The birth was easier than Katherine's previous ones, perhaps because she was not facing it alone and stressed. Ryan stayed by her side throughout, holding her hand and offering encouragement. When the midwife finally placed the baby in Katherine's arms, she looked down at a perfect, healthy baby boy. He had Ryan's dark hair and what looked like it would be Katherine's green eyes. "What should we name him?" Katherine asked Ryan, who was staring at his son with wonder and love. "Robert," Ryan said softly. "After your father, if I remember correctly. I want him to carry on the name of a good man." Katherine felt tears slip down her cheeks. She had mentioned once, months ago, that her father Robert had been a kind and gentle man, nothing like the husband who had shared his name. That Ryan remembered such a small detail, that he wanted to honor her father, meant more than she could express. "Robert it is," she agreed. The children were brought in to meet their new brother. Thomas was cautious but clearly interested. Molly cooed over the baby like he was a living doll, and James tried to poke him until Ryan gently redirected the toddler's hands to stroking the baby's soft hair. "This is your brother," Ryan told them. "His name is Robert, and it is our job to love him and protect him, just like we love and protect each other." As Katherine watched Ryan with their children, all 4 of them now, she felt a peace so profound it was almost overwhelming. This was her family, built from the ruins of her first marriage, created with love and patience and commitment. Robert Gardner had left her broken and desperate. Ryan Masters had helped her build something beautiful from those broken pieces. The years passed in a rhythm of work and family, challenges and joys. Ryan's ranch prospered, growing from a small operation to a respected spread that employed several hands. Katherine's sewing business expanded until she had a small shop in town, employing 3 women and taking orders from as far away as Denver. Thomas grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility at the ranch and proving himself capable and trustworthy. He graduated from school at 16 and chose to work the ranch full-time, his dream being to eventually manage operations when Ryan was ready to slow down. Molly was bright and artistic, her sketches and drawings showing real talent. Ryan encouraged her interest, buying her proper art supplies and arranging for lessons with a traveling painter who passed through Gunnison. She talked of perhaps going to Denver to study art when she was older. James was energetic and fearless, always climbing trees or attempting to ride horses too big for him. He kept Katherine constantly worried, but also constantly laughing with his antics and endless questions. Ryan handled him with patience and firm guidance, channeling that energy into productive work. Little Robert, or Bobby as the family called him, was a sweet-natured child who seemed to take the best qualities from both Katherine and Ryan. He was gentle like his mother but brave like his father, and the older children doted on him. In 1882, Katherine found herself pregnant again. She was 32 now, and while she was healthy, she worried about the risks of another pregnancy at her age. Ryan was attentive and protective throughout, often to the point of being overprotective. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," Katherine would remind him when he insisted she rest instead of working. "I just want to make sure you are safe," Ryan would reply. "You and the baby both." This baby was a girl, born in January of 1883. They named her Grace because that was what she felt like to Katherine, a gift of grace, a blessing on top of blessings. Grace had Ryan's blue-gray eyes and Katherine's auburn hair, a beautiful combination that made everyone who saw her stop and comment. The family was complete now. Thomas at 14, Molly at 11, James at 9, Bobby at 3, and newborn Grace. Their house was full of noise and life and love, everything Katherine had dreamed of during those dark days after Robert Gardner left her. One evening when Grace was about 6 months old, Katherine and Ryan sat on their porch watching the sunset. The older children were doing evening chores, Bobby was playing with wooden animals Ryan had carved, and Grace slept peacefully in Katherine's arms. "You ever think about him?" Ryan asked quietly. "Your first husband?" Katherine considered the question. "Sometimes. I used to wonder what I did wrong, what I could have done differently to make him stay. But I do not think that way anymore. His leaving had nothing to do with my worth and everything to do with his weakness. If he had not left, I would not have you. I would not have this life. So in a strange way, I am grateful he left, even though it was painful. I am grateful too, though I hate what you went through to get here." Ryan reached over and took her hand. "You are the strongest person I know, Katherine. The way you kept going, kept fighting for your children even when everything seemed hopeless. That strength is what I saw that first day, and it is what I still see every day. I am only strong because I have you beside me. When I was alone, I was just surviving. With you, I am thriving." "We are thriving." 6 years, Ryan mused. 6 years since I rode into Gunnison looking for work and found you instead. Best decision I ever made, staying in this town. Katherine smiled, remembering that day when a stranger had stood up for her against Mr. Henderson, how she had been too proud to accept help but too desperate to refuse it. "I remember warning you about my children, thinking you would run if you knew the full extent of my situation. You said, I have 3 children, Ryan recalled, like it was a warning, and you said, then I will have 4 reasons to stay. Ryan squeezed her hand. I meant it then, and I mean it now. Every child, including our Bobby and Grace, they are all reasons to stay. But the biggest reason is you, Katherine. You are my home. Tears slipped down Katherine's cheeks, but they were happy tears, gratitude for this man who had kept every promise he had made. And you are mine. As the sun set over the Colorado mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Katherine looked at the life she had built. Her children were healthy and happy. Her business was successful. Her husband loved her deeply and completely. The town that had once judged her so harshly now treated her with respect. Some of it earned through her hard work, but some of it reflecting Ryan's standing in the community. But more than any external measure of success, Katherine felt peace. She had learned that strength was not about never needing help, but about accepting it when offered. She had learned that love could be both passionate and steady, exciting and comfortable. She had learned that family was not just about blood, but about choice and commitment, and showing up day after day. Thomas came around the corner of the house leading one of the horses, his movements confident and sure. He had grown tall, nearly as tall as Ryan now, and he carried himself with the bearing of a young man who knew his worth. When he saw Katherine and Ryan on the porch, he waved. Pa, that fence in the north pasture needs repairing. I thought I would head out early tomorrow and fix it if that is all right with you. Pa. Thomas had started calling Ryan that about a year after the wedding, tentatively at first and then with growing confidence. Ryan had never asked for the title, never pushed for it, which was probably why Thomas had given it so freely. That is fine, son, Ryan called back. Want some help? I can manage, but if you want to come along, I would appreciate the company. Katherine watched the exchange with a full heart. This was what she had wanted for her children. A father who would teach them and guide them, but also respect them as individuals. Ryan had given them that and so much more. Molly appeared next, carrying a basket of eggs from the henhouse. She had grown beautiful, Katherine noted with a mother's mix of pride and worry. In a few years, young men would come calling, and Katherine would have to navigate those complications. But for now, Molly was still her little girl, interested more in drawing and helping with baby Grace than in boys. Mama, can I hold Grace? Molly asked, setting down the egg basket. Katherine carefully transferred the sleeping baby to her daughter's arms. Molly settled into a rocking chair, gazing at her baby sister with adoration. She is so perfect. I hope when I grow up and have babies, they are as beautiful as Grace. I am sure they will be, Katherine said, amused by her daughter's certainty about future motherhood. Though you have plenty of time before you need to worry about such things. James was the last to appear, covered in dirt and grinning widely. Ma, I found a frog by the creek. Can I keep it? Absolutely not, Katherine said firmly. The frog belongs in the creek, not in our house. But Pa catches animals sometimes to show us. And then he releases them back where they belong, Ryan interjected. Your ma is right. The frog stays outside. James looked disappointed but not surprised. He had tried this particular argument many times with the same result. Yes, sir, I will go put him back. As James ran off to return his frog to the creek, Bobby toddled over to Ryan, holding up his wooden animals. Pa, play. Ryan scooped up the little boy, settling him on his lap. What should we play? Are the horses running in the field? Yes, fast horses. Bobby made galloping sounds, moving his wooden horse through the air. Katherine watched her husband play with their son, the same patience and attention he gave to all the children, and she felt gratitude wash over her. She had been given a second chance at happiness, at family, at love. Not everyone got such chances, and she would never take it for granted. That night, after all the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Katherine and Ryan lay together in their room. Grace slept in a cradle nearby, her soft breathing a gentle rhythm in the darkness. Ryan. Katherine said softly, Thank you for everything, for seeing me when I felt invisible, for loving my children like they were yours, for building this life with me. Ryan rolled to face her, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. Katherine, loving you and those children is not something I do because I should. It is something I do because I cannot imagine doing anything else. You are my joy, all of you. He kissed her then, tender and deep, a kiss that still made her heart race after years of marriage. When they broke apart, Katherine nestled against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I love you, Ryan Masters. I love you too, Katherine Masters, today, tomorrow, and always. As Katherine drifted toward sleep, safe in her husband's arms, her children sleeping peacefully nearby, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain of Robert's abandonment, the struggle to survive, the fear and uncertainty of those dark days. But also the moment a cowboy on a dusty horse had stood up for her in front of the general store, seeing strength where others saw shame. She had warned him about her children, thinking they would be a deterrent. Instead, Ryan had seen them as the blessing they were, 4 more reasons to stay instead of reasons to leave. He had proven himself worthy of her trust day by day, promise by promise, year by year. And now they had built something beautiful together, a ranch that prospered, children who thrived, a love that deepened with time. The gossips of Gunnison had been proven wrong. Katherine was not a failure or a woman of loose morals. She was simply a person who had been dealt a bad hand and had played it the best she could until a better hand came along. The years continued to pass in a blessed rhythm. By 1885, Thomas was 17 and had fallen in love with a sweet girl named Emma from a neighboring ranch. Ryan and Katherine gave their blessing, recognizing that their eldest son had grown into a fine young man ready to build his own life. Molly at 13 was showing serious artistic talent, and arrangements were being made for her to study in Denver when she turned 16. It would be hard to let her go, but Katherine wanted her daughter to have opportunities she herself had never had. James at 11 was still wild but channeling his energy into ranch work, showing a particular talent with horses. Ryan worked with him patiently, teaching him to train young horses, and James flourished under the attention. Bobby and Grace were inseparable, the 2 youngest always playing together despite the age difference. Bobby was protective of his little sister, and Grace adored her big brother who always had time for her games. The ranch had grown to one of the most successful in the area. Ryan employed 8 full-time hands now, and they ran several hundred head of cattle. Katherine's sewing shop had expanded as well, and she was training young women not just in sewing but in business skills, teaching them how to manage money and negotiate with customers. The couple had become pillars of the Gunnison community. Ryan served on the town council, and Katherine organized charity drives for families in need, remembering her own desperate days and wanting to help others in similar situations. Even Mrs. Peterson had grudgingly admitted that perhaps she had been too quick to judge, though she never quite apologized for the gossip she had spread. One afternoon in late summer, Katherine was working in her sewing shop when Mr. Henderson came in. The merchant who had once looked down on her now treated her with respect, perhaps because her business success had made her someone who could not be dismissed. Mrs. Masters, he said, removing his hat, I have a favor to ask. What can I do for you, Mr. Henderson? My Billy is getting married next month. His fiancée wants a special dress made, something finer than anything available locally. I was hoping you might take the commission." Katherine hid her surprise. Billy Henderson, the boy who had tormented her son and other children, was getting married. Time passed quickly indeed. I would be happy to discuss it with the bride, have her come by for a consultation. There is one more thing. Mr. Henderson shifted uncomfortably. "I wanted to apologize for how I treated you years ago when your son broke my window. I was harsh and judgmental, and I am sorry for that. You have proven yourself to be a woman of strong character, and I should have seen that from the beginning." The apology, unexpected and sincere, touched Katherine more than she would have thought possible. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I appreciate that." After he left, Katherine sat for a moment, reflecting on how far she had come. The woman who had stood outside Henderson's store with 3 children and a broken heart would hardly recognize the successful businesswoman she had become. But the core of who she was had not changed. She was still the same person, just no longer struggling alone. That evening, she told Ryan about Mr. Henderson's apology. They sat together in their favorite spot on the porch, watching the sunset as they had done countless times before. "He should have apologized years ago," Ryan said. "But I am glad he finally found the decency to do it. I am just glad we do not need his approval anymore. We built this life despite people like him, not because of them." "We built it together," Ryan corrected, "and we will keep building it, whatever comes." In 1887, Thomas married his Emma in a beautiful ceremony at the church. Katherine cried watching her oldest son pledge his life to a young woman who clearly loved him. Ryan stood beside Thomas as his best man, and the pride on Ryan's face was unmistakable. Thomas and Emma settled in a house. Ryan helped them build on a corner of the ranch property. The plan was for Thomas to eventually take over ranch operations when Ryan was ready to step back. It gave Katherine peace knowing the ranch would stay in the family, that the legacy Ryan had built would continue. Molly left for Denver to study art, as planned. It was hard watching her daughter board the stage, but Molly's excitement made it bearable. She wrote letters every week, describing her classes and the city and all the new things she was learning. Ryan had arranged for her to stay with a respectable family, and she seemed happy and safe. James, at 13, was already talking about possibly becoming a professional horse trainer, traveling to different ranches and working with difficult animals. Ryan encouraged the dream while also making sure James understood the realities of such a life. Bobby and Grace continued to grow, now 9 and 6 respectively. Bobby was in school and showing an interest in numbers and figures, often helping Ryan with the ranch accounts. Grace was artistic like Molly, always drawing or painting, creating colorful pictures that Katherine saved in a special box. One spring morning in 1888, Katherine woke feeling unwell. She dismissed it as something she ate, but when the feeling persisted for several days, she began to suspect the truth. At 38, she was pregnant again, a surprise that left her both joyful and worried. Dr. Morrison, who had delivered Grace and Bobby, examined her and confirmed the pregnancy. He also cautioned that at her age, she needed to be careful and rest more than she might have with earlier pregnancies. Ryan was protective to an almost smothering degree when she told him, "You are going to rest and let others handle everything. The shop, the house, all of it. Ryan, I am pregnant, not dying. I can still function. I know, but I worry. You are not as young as you were with the others." "Thank you for that reminder," Katherine said dryly, but she understood his concern. She felt it herself, a low-level anxiety about the risks. The pregnancy progressed well despite the fears. Katherine worked less at the shop, training her assistants to handle more of the complex orders. At home, Grace and Bobby helped with household tasks, and Thomas's wife Emma offered to help with cooking and cleaning. The baby was born in December of 1888, a healthy boy they named Daniel. The birth was harder than the others, leaving Katherine exhausted but happy. Ryan held his newest son with the same wonder he had shown holding Bobby years before. "Last one," Katherine said firmly from her bed. "I am too old for this." Ryan laughed softly. "Whatever you say, love, you have given me more than I ever dreamed of." The family gathered to meet Daniel. Thomas and Emma with their own baby daughter now, Molly home from Denver for the holidays, James holding Bobby up to see better, and Grace standing on tiptoes to peek at her new brother. Looking at her family, Katherine felt overwhelming gratitude. 9 years ago, she had been alone with 3 children and no hope. Now she had a husband who loved her, 6 children ranging from infant to married adult, a successful business, a beautiful home, and standing in the community. She had everything she had ever wanted and more than she had dared to dream. The years continued their steady march. Molly graduated from her art program in Denver and returned to Gunnison, where she opened a small art studio and gave lessons to local children. She had grown into a talented and confident young woman, independent but still close to her family. James left home at 18 to work as a horse trainer, traveling to different ranches across Colorado and Wyoming. It was hard for Katherine to let him go, but she knew he needed to pursue his dreams. He wrote letters regularly, and he always came home for Christmas. Bobby showed a head for business that impressed everyone. At 13, he was helping Ryan make decisions about the ranch, offering insights that proved valuable. Ryan began teaching him about investments and land management, preparing him to potentially run the financial side of the ranch operation. Grace grew into a beautiful and kind young woman, beloved by everyone who knew her. She had inherited her father's compassion and her mother's strength, a combination that served her well. Little Daniel was a surprise baby in every way, arriving late in Katherine's life and bringing unexpected joy. He was cheerful and curious, keeping Katherine and Ryan young as they chased after him. In 1895, tragedy struck when Mr. Patterson, who had been like a father to Ryan, passed away in his sleep at the age of 78. Ryan was devastated, having lost one of the few people he had been close to before meeting Katherine. The old rancher left a portion of his land to Ryan in his will, recognizing the partnership they had built over the years. "He believed in me when I was just a drifter looking for work," Ryan said at the funeral. "He gave me a chance and became a friend. I would not have any of this without him." Katherine held her husband as he grieved, grateful she could be there for him as he had been there for her so many times. They weathered the loss together, finding comfort in each other and in their family. By 1900, Thomas had taken over daily operations of the ranch, which had grown to one of the largest in the region. He ran it with efficiency and fairness, earning the respect of the hands and the community. His own family had grown to include 3 children, giving Katherine and Ryan their first grandchildren. Molly married a fellow artist she had met in Denver, a kind man named Peter who appreciated her talent and supported her career. They settled in Gunnison, building a house near the art studio. Their wedding was a joyful celebration, and Katherine cried happy tears watching her daughter marry for love. James continued his work as a horse trainer, gaining a reputation across the West for his skill. He never married, claiming he was too much of a wanderer for family life, but he remained close to his siblings and visited regularly. Bobby, at 22, was managing the business side of the ranch while also investing in other ventures. He had inherited his mother's head for numbers and his father's work ethic, a powerful combination. He courted a school teacher from Denver, a smart woman named Helen who challenged him intellectually. Grace at 17 was still at home, helping Katherine with the sewing business and taking care of Daniel. She had suitors but had not yet found anyone who truly captured her heart. Katherine was not worried. Her daughter was young and had time to find the right person. Daniel at 12 was full of energy and ideas, already talking about wanting to study medicine when he was older. He was fascinated by how things worked, including the human body, and Dr. Morrison had taken him under his wing, letting the boy observe and learn. One evening in the summer of 1900, Katherine and Ryan sat on their porch as they had done for 22 years of marriage. Their hair was graying now, Ryan's more than Katherine's, and they moved a bit slower than they used to. But the love between them had not diminished. If anything, it had grown deeper, rooted in decades of partnership and shared joys and sorrows. "You ever regret it?" Katherine asked, the question coming out of nowhere. "Taking on a widow with 3 children, tying yourself down when you could have remained free?" Ryan turned to her with genuine surprise. "Regret? Katherine, you and our children are the best thing that ever happened to me. Why would I regret the greatest blessing of my life? I just wonder sometimes if you ever think about what might have been if you had ridden on past Gunnison that day." "I think about it occasionally," Ryan admitted. "And I am grateful every time that I stopped. You gave my life meaning, Katherine. Before you, I was just drifting, working for wages, going nowhere. You gave me a reason to build something lasting. You gave me a family, a home, love." "How could I possibly regret that?" Katherine leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. "I love you, Ryan Masters. 22 years, and I love you more now than I did on our wedding day. I love you too, and I meant what I said all those years ago. You told me you had 3 children, and I said I would have 4 reasons to stay. Those reasons multiplied over the years, but they all come back to you. You are my reason, Katherine. You always have been." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. In the distance, they could see Thomas working with some of the hands, Bobby reviewing papers in his office, Grace helping young Daniel with his studies. Their family, spread across the ranch, each pursuing their own dreams but always connected by bonds of love. Katherine thought about the scared, desperate woman she had been when Robert Gardner left her. That woman would hardly recognize the life Katherine had now. She had survived abandonment and poverty, gossip and judgment. She had built a business, raised successful children, and found a love that sustained her through everything. And all of it had started with a cowboy who had seen her worth when others saw only shame, who had looked at her 3 children and seen not burdens but blessings, who had promised to stay and had kept that promise for over 2 decades. "What are you thinking about?" Ryan asked, noting her reflective expression. "Everything. Nothing. Just how grateful I am for this life we built together." "We still have many good years ahead of us," Ryan said. "Grandchildren to spoil, maybe even great-grandchildren someday, the ranch to watch grow. Our children finding their own ways in the world. Our story is not over yet." "No," Katherine agreed. "It is not over, but whatever comes, I know we will face it together." "Together," Ryan echoed, sealing the promise with a kiss. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Katherine reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had warned a stranger about her 3 children, thinking it would send him running. Instead, he had seen those children as 4 reasons to stay, counting her among the blessings. He had proven himself worthy of her trust day by day, year by year, building a life together that was richer and fuller than Katherine had ever imagined possible. She had found love when she thought her life was over. She had built success from failure, family from abandonment, joy from sorrow. And through it all, Ryan had been beside her, steady and strong, loving her and their children with a devotion that never wavered. That was the real miracle, Katherine thought. Not that a handsome cowboy had ridden into town and solved her problems, but that a good man had seen her struggling and had chosen to stand beside her, to build something beautiful together, to transform 4 reasons to stay into a lifetime of love. Their story was proof that second chances existed, that love could be found even in the darkest times, that family was built on choice and commitment as much as blood. Katherine had learned that she was worthy of love, that her children were treasures, not burdens, that strength came from accepting help as much as from providing it. And as she sat on the porch with Ryan's arm around her, surrounded by the life they had built together, Katherine knew she had found her happily ever after. It had not come easily or quickly, but it had come. And it was more beautiful than any fairy tale Thomas had ever read to his siblings, more precious than any dream Katherine had dared to dream during those dark days alone. She had 3 children, she had warned, and Ryan had said he would have 4 reasons to stay. Those reasons had multiplied into 6 children, grandchildren, a ranch, a business, and a love that defined both their lives. But at the heart of it all was a simple truth. They had chosen each other, day after day, year after year, building something that would last not just their lifetimes but generations beyond. That was the legacy Katherine wanted to leave, not just land or business success, but the knowledge that love could heal even the deepest wounds, that family could be created through commitment and care, that second chances were real if you were brave enough to accept them. As the night deepened and they finally rose to go inside, Ryan held the door for Katherine, his hand at the small of her back, a gesture so familiar it was almost unconscious. Inside, their home waited, full of memories and love, a testament to everything they had built together. Katherine paused in the doorway, looking back at the land spreading out under the stars, the ranch that was their legacy, the life they had created. Then she looked at Ryan, her partner, her love, the man who had given her back her hope. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For staying." "For all 4 reasons." Ryan smiled, understanding without further explanation. "Thank you for giving me reasons worth staying for." They went inside together, closing the door on another day in a life full of days well lived. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys, grandchildren to spoil and business to manage, children to guide and a ranch to run. But whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together, as they had faced everything for over 2 decades. That was the promise Ryan had made that first day, when a desperate woman had warned him about her 3 children, and he had seen opportunity instead of burden. He had promised to stay, and he had kept that promise through good times and hard times, through 6 children and countless challenges, through poverty and prosperity. And Katherine had made her own promise, to trust again after betrayal, to love again after abandonment, to build a new life from the ruins of the old. She had kept her promise too, opening her heart to a stranger who became her partner, raising their children together, creating a legacy that would outlast them both. Their story was simple in its way. 2 people meeting at the right time, choosing each other day after day, building something beautiful from determination and love. It was the kind of story that happened every day in the Wild West, in small towns across the frontier. But to Katherine and Ryan, it was everything. It was their life, their love, their legacy. And as they settled into bed that night, surrounded by the quiet sounds of their home and their family sleeping safely nearby, Katherine knew she had everything she needed. Not because a cowboy had rescued her, but because she had been strong enough to accept help when offered, brave enough to love again after being hurt, wise enough to recognize a good man when she found one. She had warned him about her children. He had given her forever. And together, they had built a life worth living, a love worth celebrating, a family worth everything. That was the story of Katherine and Ryan Masters, a story of love found in unlikely places, of strength discovered in desperate times, of family built on choice and commitment. It was a story with a happy ending, not because everything was perfect, but because two people had chosen to make it so day by day, year by year, for the rest of their lives.